Assalamu alaikum, guys. Welcome to another episode of macan or Dawo. So inshallah today, as promised, we will be making Somali rice. This rice honestly is so simple to make. It is so aromatic, so flavorful. You guys definitely would love it. So inshallah, let's get started. So we will need for this recipe, this is everything we'll be using. These are our spices. I'm just showing you the whole spice, but I'm not a fan of cooking whole spices. I just don't like chunky stuff in my rice. So what we're going to do is actually grind it. So that's the rice that we've soaked for that's been soaked for about an hour, but you just need to soak it for half an hour. There's our onions, and that's goat broth that I'm using there. So we're gonna go ahead and grind everything together. So inshallah, here I have nutmeg. So I showed you the full nutmeg. We're not using a whole one. We're just going to be using like a quarter. So those the cardamom, the nutmeg, and the cloves. We will be using a piece of the cinnamon stick. That's the only full spice we actually will be cooking. But the rest we will actually be blending here. So this is the consistency we're looking for once everything is grinded together, and we will be using 1 teaspoon. So here I have 2.5 cups of rice. So it does depend on how much rice you'll be using, but 1 teaspoon was more than enough for the amount of rice that I was going to be cooking. So we're going to just put that aside. Put that on there, and we're gonna get started inshallah. So just put on your stove, turn your stove on to medium high, and put a little bit of oil. So here I have a little over 1 tablespoon of vegetable oil. So we're going to let the oil heat a little bit there. I had a little bit of oil water in there, so that's why it just starts popping. So definitely make sure your pan is nice and dry before you put the oil in there, inshallah. You don't want to get yourself burnt. We're going to let the onions cook for a bit. And we want it to kind of brown, but here, because I'm using red onions, you obviously don't see it browning. But if you're using white, you'll definitely see that browning there. So we threw our cinnamon stick, the other half, in there, and that is the that mixture that I just put in there is what we grinded. So the nutmeg, the cardamom, the cloves, and the cinnamon stick. So we're just going to mix all that together, and then now we're going to add our hawasha. So here again, I'm using the same measurement, 1 teaspoon of hawash. So you obviously do not want to have too much of the spices in there, because then that'll just overwhelm, the rice, and it's not going to be too good. You just want to have the right amounts in there. So once we mix that in there, we are going to go ahead and add our rice, inshallah. So I washed my rice well, soaked it in cold water. I always think it's better to soak it in cold water, but because that just opens up the rice, and it also reduces the cooking time as well. So put all the rice in the pot, stir everything together. We want to get all those spices well incorporated into the rice. And then once we stir all that, we're just going to cover it and let it cook for about 2 to 3 minutes. Temperature still is at medium high. So there we go. We mixed it pretty well, covered it. All right, perfect. So here actually, I forgot to add the Maggi. So I'm just putting 1 Maggi, but if you guys were not using a broth, then this is when you would need to put 2 cubes of Maggi in there as opposed to just 1. but because of the broth already gives it, you know, there's a little bit of salt in there, it gives it enough flavor. So we do not need more than that 1 cube. So here I'm going to reduce the temperature. It's going to go up to 7, and it's going to stay at that temperature till we turn it off and the rice is cooked. So here, basically 2-3 minutes have passed, and I'm pouring in my my broth mixture. So we're gonna mix it pretty well in there, and then basically just cover it and cook it for about 15 minutes. It took 15 minutes flat for mine. There we go. So 15 minutes later, your rice is ready, mashallah, and it actually turned out so good, mashallah. So we're just gonna turn the burner off, cover it, put it aside, and let it just continue. Let the steam cook it a little bit further. At this point, you can actually add food coloring if you want to add the food coloring. So now we are going to make our, you know, just a little bit of toppings to put on top of the rice there. So here I have some onions. Turn the stove on. Once it kind of gets hot there, when the oil gets hot, you're going to go ahead and put your onions. So we're not trying to cook the onions. We still want that crunchiness. So we're just going to kind of let it just kind of like steam a little bit. This shouldn't be more than 2 minutes. So 2 minutes later, our onions have softened a little bit. Okay, and in terms of the temperature here, it needs to be on, it was a little bit high for me, so I had to lower it, but it should be on medium. So those are my raisins. I soaked the raisins in warm water for a little bit, because that just reduces the cooking time a bit more. So here I'm just showing you where my temperature is at. So I've gone ahead and lowered it there. And I'm going to give it 2 minutes. So 2 minutes later, there is our raisins and onions together. And now we're going to go ahead and add our green beans. So here you can add whatever, you know, vegetables you want. You can have those mixed vegetables, but this is what I chose, and that's what I had on hand. So 2 minutes later, we just wanted to kind of, you know, soften a little bit, but we still want that crunchiness. So this whole process shouldn't really take you more than, you know, 6-7 minutes. And there's our potatoes that I fried. It has that little bit of coloring because I didn't really add much coloring, food coloring to my rice. So I actually added it to my potatoes. So once I turned off the stove, that's when I put the potatoes in there. So everything is pretty much ready, and there is our end product. Mashallah, mashallah, you guys. So flavorful, so smells amazing. You definitely will impress your family and friends with this, you guys. I am honest to God serious. So I hope you guys enjoy it. I hope you guys make it. Let me know in the comments below how it turns out for you. Gives me a thumbs up if you like it.